Hi guys, nice to meet you all. It's a big pleasure for me to see more than 30 people here. My name is Igor. I'm CEO of IT Delight. We are tech partners of Hyva. And guys, we are so proud to become a friend of Hyva. The guys from the Netherlands, they made a great job, and this front-end theme is really brilliant. So I'm extremely happy to see you here. And Vinay, thank you for coming. Alex Galdin, thank you for being a speaker here. So guys, enjoy the show. Let the party begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. So let's start. Our first speaker will be Vinai Kopp. Vinay has been working with Magento since 2008. Besides programming, Vinay also specialized in develop training, and now he is technical director at Hyvä Themes. So, Vinay, what to you?
Thank you.
Start.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I'm very happy to be here online and speak to all of you, and I feel honored all of you decided to come by and listen to me talk about Hyva and join the party, as Leo said, despite everything that's happening. So I hope you're in a good spot wherever you are, and yeah, we can start. By the way, I'm not. I'll turn my camera on very briefly, so you know why I've got it turned off. Right, just so you know here. So I'm currently lying because of my back injury, but it's getting better, so no worries, but it just feels uncomfortable knowing this is being recorded, so I prefer to keep the camera off. Hope that's okay. So what I'll do instead is I'll share my screen and just talk about code. That's my favorite thing anyway. So what I want to talk about is actually, okay, sorry, let me fix that straight away. I started sharing only this app. I want to share the full screen so I can switch to the browser too, right? So let's just share everything here. All right, that's better. Okay, so that, and here we go. Okay, good. So yeah, I work for Hyva. And what I'll be doing is I'll try to give an overview over what it means working with Hyva. So I work as a technical director here. Feel free at any time to ask questions. If you type something in the chat, you can interrupt me at any time too, verbally, or if you write it in the chat, then you can just you know, somebody can interrupt me and tell me if I missed it, if something is written. Okay. So yeah, what I want to show you is just how it is to work with Hyva, like the web development workflow, assuming you're not yet familiar with Hyva. So if you already know Hyva and have worked with it, then probably what I'm going to tell you is like that were the first steps you took, right? So Alex will talk more about more advanced topics later. So from my side, it's nothing advanced at all. Okay, so what I've got here is a fresh instance of Magento 245p1, and it's and I've got Hyva installed, right? It's just, and sample data, and so yeah, this is always a little strange how to get started here. Because of course, Hyva, there's quite a lot to it, but I guess to get started, the main difference is Hyva is really focused on front-end performance. And one important factor there is if we load a page and look at the files that get loaded, we can see there's just a single CSS file and a single JavaScript file. Right? The JavaScript file is compressed 14K. And the CSS is 15K. So that's teeny compared to other themes, for example, Luma, right? There's a lot more stuff going on. So that's one of the biggest reasons why Hyva is fast, and usually it's quite easy, passing core web vitals and such. So how does it look like if we now want to work with Hyva? So on the technical side of things, when you install Hyva, the main parts of Hyva are two composer packages, right? So here's the vendor folder, and our vendor packages namespace is Hyvä Themes, and in there we have the Magento 2 default theme and the Magento 2 theme module. Those are our main two packages. The others are more like utility packages, and I don't know if we'll talk more about those or not, we'll see. Most of the time, what we're working about and working with is a theme, right? So this is basically a theme, just a regular Magento theme, but the main difference is the parent theme of this theme is the Hyva Reset. Right? So that's this package right here, the Reset theme. So that's another theme, and all this theme does is it overrides every single layout XML file that exists in the base modules or in the blank theme, right? And all it does is, okay, that's not a good example. Here, this one's better. It removes all blocks, right? It just keeps containers. And so if somebody were to install the Reset theme and choose it as the current theme, the page would be completely empty, like not even the blank theme. There's nothing in there. But all we get is a new structure of containers. And then in the Magento default theme, that's where in the layout XML files, the contents for these Reset theme containers are then declared, right? So all in all, it's still just completely normal, regular Magento layout XML that every Magento developer knows and loves. Or, I mean, everyone knows it, but most love it. Right? That's one of the really good things about Magento, I think. And that's why it's also part of Hyva. So, so what we end up with because of this is we have a front end on Magento that's rendered with layout XML and PHTML, but there's nothing from Luma left, right? It's completely gone. It's completely, all the HTML is rebuilt and all the whole front end stack. So if we look at the page here, and I just want to have a look at the chat to see if there are any questions so far, but it seems like, no, it was just to check if everything was, if pictures were working and such. Okay, good. So yeah, if we look at the theme here, how does it work? You know, changing it, modifying it, making adjustments, maybe implementing new things in this theme. How does it look like? And I want to focus on two specific parts. Most of all, a little bit of how does the CSS work here, and how is it working with the JavaScript here, right? Because otherwise, the PHTML, that's just like with Luma. I mean, it's still just PHP and PHTML templates, so nothing new to learn there. So in general, Hyva, as you probably heard, Hyva uses Tailwind CSS. So it's tailwindcss.com right here. So it's very well known. Meanwhile, PWA Studio also switched to using it, and so on. So it's a utility class framework, CSS framework. There are many other CSS frameworks that are kind of similar too, but Tailwind CSS is by far the most well known. It's very well documented. We only recently upgraded to Tailwind version 3. Even though it was released a year ago, we stuck with the old version for a long time. So chances are, if you worked with Hyva before, or maybe also if you start working on an existing project, it might still be using Tailwind CSS version 2. And just be aware that when you look at the documentation, then you want to switch to the correct version of Tailwind CSS that you're working with. right? So the way this utility CSS works, in case you're not familiar with it, actually, let me show it to you in the browser. That's even better, I guess. So if I inspect this element here, let's see, maybe here, yeah. So here we can see the class property, right? So here we can see all the classes, and if I remove the classes, of course, the page adjusts accordingly. Maybe this isn't the best example. Let me see if yeah, this one's maybe better. What is this? This is the container. Yeah, so here, this looks more like typical Tailwind CSS classes. Right, so Tailwind classes are almost like CSS, only they're abstracted away into these utility class names. For example, flex, it would be just like declaring a flex item in inline styles. But the benefit of doing it with these utility classes is there are several things. So for one, we are able to the Tailwind compiler can apply resets that are needed up front, and can also apply changes that are necessary for, to accommodate for browser differences. And also, we are able to create so-called variants. So for example, here, this class LG:MT8 means, so first, the part after the colon MT8 means margin top 8, which translates to some kind of I don't know, I don't remember, some rem value. We could look it up here. Oh yeah, there it is, a 2 rem, that's MT8, margin top. And the LG in front of it, that stands for large. It's like a breakpoint. And the Tailwind compiler renders this class out of it. So the idea is to build this whole thing mobile first. So we start with what should display by default, and then in successively larger getting breakpoints, we define additional classes that will be applied only on larger screen sizes. Right. So if I remove this here, I don't know, can I change something here? That, oh yeah, okay. So that's maybe more visible here. Others don't seem to make a real difference right now. Anyway, so that's this idea of these small class names, and it's pretty easy to learn them quickly. At first, when I started, I didn't really feel comfortable with them. To be honest, mainly because I'm not that comfortable with CSS anyway. I always was more of a backend developer. But now, and especially with the help of Tailwind CSS, I feel quite comfortable working in the front end too. Right. So okay, so that's Tailwind CSS, and if we want to now start styling things here, we could always just add classes here, I guess. So let's see, add new class, border to whatever, border red 500. Okay, so as usual here, Chrome gives me suggestions for all the classes it knows, right? But there are many classes that I can use that Chrome actually doesn't know right now. So for example, if I say red 800 here, well, that class doesn't seem to exist. And the reason is, what Tailwind does is there's a compile step. And during that compile step, Tailwind inspects all the templates and then will compile only the CSS for the classes that we are actually using on the page, on any page. And those go into the style CSS file. And that's one of the reasons why the style CSS file stays so small, is because the same classes are just used in many different combinations again and again and again, right? So that's why once a class is defined, it won't be regenerated because it's just reused in other places. And that's the main difference to many other CSS structures, where more and more each new thing that is created creates a new, gets a new name, gets a new style, and so on. And it's not as easy to keep the CSS file small, because it just tends to grow and grow and grow over time. And with Tailwind CSS, there's like an upper bound. After some time, it tends to not grow very much anymore. And now, how is it to work with this? So like I said, some of these Tailwind CSS classes, they might not exist yet because they haven't been used in any Magento templates. And there's a very handy tool that I can recommend there, Dev Tools for Tailwind CSS. And this builds, this is a commercial product. It's maybe 40 euros or such by Beyond Code is the company. And this embeds the Tailwind compiler into the page. So with this, I'm actually able to use any Tailwind class at all and get auto completion, and it will compile it on the fly and load it on the fly to the page accordingly. Border, whatever, you know, here we have the I also need a border color, I guess. Border width. Yeah, there we go again. So once I border X, of course, means only on the X axis, border Y is only on the Y axis. So it's actually very consistent in the way. So we have to define the border color and the border width as two classes there. Right. So that's usually how I work. I use this little tool and then I just tweak it along until I get the classes that I want. And then in the end, I take them and copy them into the template. And then when I run the Tailwind compiler, it gets included into the page. Because right now, of course, if I reload, it's all gone again. So how does it work running the Tailwind compiler? In Hyva, there's a, in the theme, there's a directory web Tailwind, right? And in this directory, that's where all the Tailwind CSS compiler related stuff is. So there's a package JSON file. So for the first time I want to install something there, I would run npm install or CI to pull in all the packages. And I've got a config file for Tailwind. And well, to run it, let's just do it. So I'll just go into the vendor Hyvä Themes Magento 2 default theme web Tailwind folder. And usually this would be your custom theme, right? Your custom Magento theme, which uses, for example, this one here, the Hyvä default theme, as a parent, right? And all I have to do here now is, well, I could install it. I already did that. And now I can run one of the predefined scripts, for example, build prod for build production bundle. And now it's scanning all the files and rebuilding the style CSS file. And that's it. So if I were to use one of the new classes in the template file, now it would, and reload, now it would also be known. And actually during development, what also works very well, I can also run npm run watch, and then it will, sorry, was there a question or something?
Maybe just accidentally.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay, so if I run the watcher here, now I can go ahead and start modifying any template file. So let me go to the home page. So I think this here was the template for the home page here. Yeah, I guess that's it. So here's the home page. If I in here, Hyvä Themes. Call to action. Where is this used? Right here. Okay. So let's say I want to change this to a new, at the typical border here, border, whatever, 3. Well, let's set the background color BG red 600. Okay, so that's one of the classes that doesn't exist, but as soon as I save, you can see it will rebuild automatically. And now when I reload, it's there wherever it is right now. Where did I change it? I changed it on right here, page 1. Oh, it should be this one. You can see this is completely live. BD blue one. It's not showing because yeah. Okay, typical. So that happens during development, right? You try something and it doesn't work. Oh, wonderful. Is it, am I working on the correct side even? So this is 241p1. Oh, wait, no, I'm not working on the correct side. Oh, you know what? Yeah, of course, full page cache. It's Magento, right? So I wasn't running my cache watch utility here. So let me just start that. And then flush the full page cache. So there we go. Okay. So now if I switch back to the watcher here and change this to something else, then it will automatically be reapplied accordingly. Yeah, I did it. Okay, good. There we go. Okay, so I can't believe it. I ran into a caching during presentation. Anyway, so we can also run browser watch. So if you have multiple screens, then you can browse in one and it reloads automatically. And that gives quite a nice development workflow. Now, these colors here, like what is this 700 on this red background or text blue 900 and such? Those are configured in the Tailwind config file. Right, so this here is the Tailwind config.js file. And in here, we can see the breakpoints, for example, like the different prefixes that I showed you earlier with SM, MD, LG, and so on. By the way, these are the default Tailwind breakpoints, but we added them in here too, just for easier reference, right? So it's easier to change if needed. And then here we have the colors, and the way Hyva is built is so this colors object, that's part of the Tailwind, so we just can import it here. And so colors blue 100 would be very light and colors blue 900 would be very dark. And for each of the colors, we have like a primary color and a secondary color. And of each of those, we define a lighter, a default, and a darker version. And so just by changing these values here, it will, we can already apply changes to all of Hyva globally, right? So if we would say our primary color is yellow, right? Whatever, like so here. Reload. Too quick reload. Nope. I should have restarted. One moment, let me just check the jobs are running. Yeah, oh yeah, okay, of course. Can't believe we're getting another. Oh yeah, actually color primary works, sure, but if I wanted to see it here, I would also have to go to the button color, right, and the border color and so on. They're different. Background color, text color. You can see I'm still not really a front-end developer. Wasn't there a button in here somewhere? Oh, I would have expected this already to have been picked up. Well, but let's just check. So here we have the class. Where's the button? Here, class button primary. Okay, so where does this button primary come from? I would have assumed it would use a primary color, but let's see. So this comes actually from a couple of components that have been extracted into the theme, into the CSS, right here and here. So here we have the components button CSS. So that's not default Tailwind, that's something that's Hyva specific. So let's say if we apply button, what background color does it use? None here. And if we have primary, button primary, here it is. Button primary lighter, BG. Okay, so I have to change the background color lighter to change the background color to change the button colors. Okay, so let's do the whole thing again here. In the background, lighter one, and the default one. Okay, so now this should rebuild. Let go, reload, and there it is. Okay, and we still should have the hover effect accordingly, right? And so on. So it's been a while since I last did that, but that's okay. So here you basically can have easy tools to apply changes that are affected globally all through the whole theme. Okay. Yeah. And it uses post CSS here. So we have this apply where we can use Tailwind classes that are used that already exist or are also defined in one of these other classes and apply them to this new class here. And we can also nest the declarations accordingly. So that's yeah, standard post CSS, but with Tailwind CSS. And regardless whether I change the configuration or CSS file or template, the rebuild happens automatically. Yeah. So let me just check. Is there a question? Why in vendor, dear? Ah, yeah, good question. That's just for today for the demo. So in real, you would usually create your own custom child theme. That's a great question, actually, right? So you'll, as you just another typical Magento theme, you'll create your own front-end child theme here and copy over this web folder. And then you'll create, just copy over the templates and layout files that you need to adjust as usual. So I'm just working in vendor here right now because that's what I already had here, right? So this is just a temporary demo instance. I'll throw these changes away once I'm done, right? This is just for now. I should have created a custom theme, I guess. That would have been really more. I just didn't think of doing that. And so because I'm part of Hyva, I guess I didn't think of creating a real child theme. Sorry about that. But yeah, the good question. Thanks for asking. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's a rough idea of Tailwind and how it's used in Hyva. So we basically just have all these classes. This just takes a little while to get used to, but then it's pretty easy to work with, well documented, and learning Tailwind is something that really comes in useful because it's used so widely nowadays. All right. Okay, I guess for anybody who knows CSS, they'll feel at home with Tailwind very quickly, much quicker than I did, because to be fair, when I started, I wasn't really familiar with modern CSS very much. You can tell, right? Still. Okay, anyway, so much for CSS. And to give you an idea how it looks working with, let's keep that open here. How is it working with JavaScript, right? So if we go to let's say a product detail page, add something to the cart. We still have this weird shitty color on the buttons, but it's just a demo. I'm not a designer, not at all. Okay, and now it's added to the cart. And as usual, and you can see the mini cart is this kind of slider that, like this cart drawer that comes in from the side by default, right? And the idea is in Hyva that we use a lot of the HTML5 capabilities natively, like different input types and other things. So a lot of things that in Luma were built with JavaScript, we didn't even have to build them because nowadays they already exist with good browser support out of the box, right? So that's why much of the JavaScript that already existed in Luma isn't really needed anymore. That, of course, especially was true once we dropped support for Internet Explorer. thankfully. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why we get away with it. And the main idea here is, the philosophy, so to say, is we want people to be able to look at the source code and look at how something is implemented and be able to learn from it, right? And that's like it used to be in the good old days, early web days. So that's why we actually use inline JavaScript with no compilation step. So if I open this cart drawer template here, I think there was in here also. Here. There it is, cart drawer, right? That's a nice little example. Okay, so here you see one function definition right there, straight in the PHTML file, init cart drawer, and it returns an object. So let me just collapse that for now. And the way this is used is with Alpine.js. Anybody who knows Vue.js will feel very at home there too. Oh, and I'm just seeing a question. Let me just answer that first. How does Tailwind work with some dynamic classes which are added from JavaScript? Yeah, great question. Perfect. Yeah, good timing actually. So I can even expand that even further. How does Tailwind CSS work with classes that are added from, let's say, layout files, right? So in XML files as block arguments and such. And the way that works is in the Tailwind config here, for each theme, we define content paths. Let me zoom in a little here. So basically, relative to this file, this here means all PHTML files in the current theme and all layout XML files in the current theme. And if I've got a child theme, if I'm a child theme and I want to extend from, let's say, the default theme, then I could uncomment this, and that would also add all template files from the parent theme. And when I'm now compiling, what happens is that Tailwind will look for any file matches these patterns, and it'll use any valid class name it finds. It doesn't need to be in the class tag of a DOM element. It could be in PHTML in a comment. So let's say if I added a comment here, MT10 margin top 10 or margin X10 or whatever, when Tailwind would be looking at this PHTML file, it'll see this and know this is a Tailwind class and compile the classes, the styles for it. So it doesn't matter if I use the class in JavaScript or in PHP or in HTML. Tailwind can always see it and knows which class it needs to create. The difference is, of course, if I use a class in a PHP file, let's say a view model or block, so not in the template, but in the block class, then Tailwind wouldn't see it. And then we would either have to adjust the path to include PHP files in some module, but normally that's not done. But what usually would be done is I'd actually add a comment here. The only thing that we can't do is, we can't build things dynamically, like depending on a user flag at the full or not through string concatenation, right? The class name has to be used in full, otherwise Tailwind can't recognize it. That's the one limitation there, right? So otherwise, yeah, just compile everything the way I want it. And by the way, while we're talking about this compilation path, so if I create a child theme and I want to really tune the performance of my page, and I add the parent theme's PHTML path and maybe the parent theme layout XML path and so on to the content here for Tailwind to scan for classes that are being used, then I might end up actually with a number of classes that I don't really need, because if I'm overriding a template in my child theme, right, then Tailwind would see the same template both in my theme as well as in the parent theme. And then the classes from the parent theme would be in my style CSS as well as the classes from my PHTML file. And that, of course, isn't ideal because my style CSS gets larger than I need. So in practice, for most people, that actually isn't a problem. But there are some performance junkies, right? They really want to just scale up and up and up. And in those cases, you can write JavaScript in here that just, that checks which files are present in the current theme and only looks for others in the parent theme or vice versa. Or you could copy every template from the parent into the child and just modify the ones that you actually need to, and then not include the parent in the scan path, right? So that's just something to be mindful of. The more files you add to this content path, the larger the style CSS will grow. Okay. Oh, there's another comment here from Alex. Don't use utility classes stored in variables. Tailwind won't make another class until it's written directly. Yeah, I assume you mean it's okay if the class is still referenced somewhere here. So I could in the JavaScript define a class equals class. Oh, I think class is a reserved word, so I'll just use that, and I'll create an array, and in here I'll use P1 and whatever else, so padding 1. Yeah, you get the idea. BG, green, and so on. So that would be okay, because here, even though they're stored in a CSS, in a variable, so to speak, Tailwind would still see it because they are part of the source code here. That's the only requirement. But as soon as you construct them dynamically, it wouldn't work, or if they're in files that you don't scan, it wouldn't work. All right, good. So, but let's move on and look a bit more at JavaScript. To be honest, I don't even know how much time we still have. Please interrupt me when I should be done. So, okay, and then I'll hurry up a bit, I guess. So Alpine.js is very similar to Vue.js. So every time we want to create some kind of interaction in the DOM, we would create a initialization function like this one here, or the JavaScript could be added straight here. And with the Alpine.js plugin, that's quite possible. So we could just create a simple view model like this. So basically, the xData defines a object that corresponds to the, I always call it view model or component model, right? That's all the state and all the functions or methods. So that's why this method here also returns an object. And here we have the properties and we have the functions. And then we can bind and call these functions from our DOM, very similar in a way, almost like Knockout.js, right? So here, this means it's an event observer. So every time the private content loaded event is triggered on the window, execute the getData function, passing in the event data. All right, so then this will be called, and we can check if the section data contains cart data, and if so, it sets it on the object here. And then we can have reactive displays. So for example, here, template xif means all of this template node will be completely ignored by the browser. It'll be rendered, but the browser doesn't know what a template is, so it ignores it. But if Alpine sees this and the expression here evaluates to true, so if the cart property is set and cart summary count is truthy, then it'll take all the contents inside of this template and inject it into the DOM. So then it suddenly appears. Right, so that's one way to only render parts in the DOM if they're needed. And here we can see xShow open means, okay, if the open property of the view model is true, a hidden property will be removed, otherwise it will be present, right? And at click means on click, open equals false, right? So it's a simple way to add binding, similar to Knockout or whatever. Here we can say xtech get item count title. This is a function in our object right here, and all it does it constructs a string with the max items to display and how many items we have. So it'll say 2 of 2 items or 5 of 10 items or whatever. And every time the value changes, it'll get reevaluated just like you know it from Knockout or Vue or whatever. So reason why we use Alpine here and not one of the others is because Alpine is such a lightweight, small library. It doesn't use a shadow DOM or anything. It's very plain. You get exactly what you see, and we do all that inline because it's fast, right? We reduce complexity. We try to keep things simple, try to keep things inline. Another nice benefit is we have all the logic and the code that is actually affected by the logic. So this part, it's all in one file. So it's really a component, and that allows just completely replacing a template with a different version, and it just continues to work because any changes that are required for the new DOM structure, they're basically contained within the same file. So a template becomes like a UI component. There are no external dependency, or almost none. There is a base object that we have called Hyva on the window object with a number of methods, like utility methods. Some people joke this is the new jQuery object or the new Mage object. But so here in the docs, Hyva, the window Hyva objects here. So these are the properties we've got. So set cookie, get cookie, browser storage, post the given form, get the form key, format price. So there's not a lot in there, but over time, some things get added there. But we try to keep it lean and mean and small. And that's the basics of Hyva, right? So it's really fast to get started. If somebody knows Tailwind and knows Alpine.js, it's super easy to get started. Reading the Alpine.js docs takes about 2 hours, and I don't know. Again, I didn't know CSS, so it took me a little while to get comfortable, a couple of weeks. But Alpine.js, really, after reading that the docs, I wasn't productive immediately, maybe 2 hours, and that's it, right? And thanks to modern browsers, there's no real need to use something like jQuery anymore because, well, we can use fetch directly for AJAX request. We can use, well, you know, pretty much everything, query selector all, and so on to interact with the DOM, and it just works. And if we have something where we don't want to interact with the DOM, but we still want JavaScript, then we just use vanilla JavaScript. Okay, another question. All right, how to customize existing components? Just copy paste in your own theme and do changes? Okay, good question. Yes, that's one option. You can just copy paste everything and change it because the DOM and the JavaScript, they make up a unit, so they kind of belong together anyway. So that's one way. But if you now say, well, I want to create a module and sell it, right? And I want to stay compatible to new releases of Hyva. That's a good point. And the way to do that is these functions here, we create wrappers, but we don't use mixins or something. We just create a new script tag. Okay, let me add a new script tag. So that would be your own custom template, right? So a different template. Imagine this is now a different template that's rendered later. So here in this script, we could say, so what I usually do is I create an immediate invoke function expression so I don't pollute the global namespace. And now here I could say window.initCutRoll is the function name. I basically create a wrapper, you know. So how about my wrapper is a function. And in here, I want to say, you know, the original function, I call it, and now I can modify whatever I want. So let's say I want to override the method delete item from cart. So I'll say this, and now I'll say oric.delete item from cart equals item ID. Oh no, sorry. Let's do that a little, getting ahead of myself a little bit. First, let's say I want to call the original function. Passing along the item ID, and then I can whatever window.dispatch event new event my custom thing, or whatever I wanted. I could change the item ID or whatever, and then finally I'll I don't know, I don't think this actually returns something, but if this will return something, something like this. All right, and now the final step now would be to say org dot delete item for cart, like delete item for cart. Probably I should put this into a separate variable in the meantime. Okay, so here I'm basically overwriting the method with the wrapper, and now I'll here I can say window.init cart drawer equals my wrapper. Right, so now I've just overwritten a single function. I still have access to all the original stuff in the original function, or I just could replace it completely. I could add new functions, whatever. And I don't have to completely override everything. This is the old school JavaScript way of doing it. I actually personally also like using JavaScript proxies, but same idea. Okay. Okay. Oh, thanks. I just saw the message here. You have 10 to 15 minutes left to complete. So then after Hyva will be updated, we should upgrade original Hyva.js in our template. It depends on what you need. So to be honest, quite often if a theme works, then maybe you don't need changes from an update. So we encourage people to really think about which changes are actually needed during update. Obviously, anything security related should go in there. New features, well, new features usually just are new templates files, so they can just be included in your theme easily or through the fallback. Or if you override everything, then of course you had more work. You have to actually, if you copied the whole file and you want to upgrade it, then you have to actually compare it. And we have links to upgrade helper tools, community resources in our docs too, to make that easier. There was one more thing I wanted to say. I can't remember anymore. Yeah, anyway, that's the idea. One moment, let me think. Proxies, upgrade helper tools. Yeah, one more. Okay, important actually. Yeah, very cool. So one way we kept everything more upgradable also is this theme module, right? So this theme module here, that contains all the block classes we use, and most importantly, view models. And this also contains the basic Hyva object, so to speak, and Alpine.js and so on. And this module, we always keep backward compatible. So even if somebody is not updating their theme, their child theme, it's always safe to update Magento to theme module, right? And that's also a good way to get all the, let's say, server-side stuff updated. So all the classes in here, if we have a class and that is outdated, I've got an example here. Yeah, right here. So this view model here, we deprecated it, but we will not remove it, right? Here's a new one, that's a replacement, but we'll keep this one around, because why remove it? Anybody who's using it, they can continue using it. We'll keep it there, but we in the default theme and everybody else can use the new one here accordingly. And so yeah, this is basically always safe to update. It contains much of the, let's say, platform logic that we only upgrade in a backward compatible way. And then we have the actual theme that you can copy or override partially or completely and adjust as needed. Okay, further questions? Is init cart drawer a method of a global window or not? Right, init cart drawer is a window method on window right here. Right, it's declared in the global scope of the page. So it's really super simple. And could you please tell a few words about Hyva's accessibility? Oh yeah, great question. Okay, so we do try to be accessible. So for example, keyboard navigation and such, we've got that basically. Also for our sliders and such. So we can use keyboard navigation there and such. But of course, to be honest, there's still quite a lot to do. And right now we are working with Snowdog in Poland, in Poznan. They're a partner of ours, and they have specialized to some degree in accessibility work. So right now we have a big Google Doc with the accessibility report they created and addressing each of these features. They are also helping us making Hyva more accessible, and we are also training our developers to become, accessibility expert to some degree at the same time to own that topic, so we can ensure Hyva will be compliant with all regulations, which is already super important for the United States and for France, but is getting more and more important everywhere else as well. So I think we're in a pretty good shape all in all. But of course, especially let's say in a couple of months, we'll be in excellent shape. Yeah, thanks for the question. Okay, and I think we're probably out of time. If there's any other questions, please feel free to, you can still type them. You can reach out to me by email or Twitter or wherever you want. I'll be happy to chat about Hyva at any time. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And I'm looking forward to Alex's talk.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to see all of you guys here. I'm at Galdin, talking about the ways to keep it fun with Hyvä Themes. I'm planning to cover a few topics. I will start with the Tailwind CSS in the theme inheritance. Then I'll move to the Alpine.js components and the ways of optimizing it for better performance. And I will wrap up with the common checkout solutions, such as React Checkout and Luma Checkout. I won't be covering Hyva Mage-OS Checkout because I don't have any experience with that so far, but I can't wait to use it when it's released. Yeah, so it's the structure. Let's start with the Tailwind CSS in the theme inheritance. First of all, it's all about Node.js package. As you may know, Tailwind is built with the Node.js. So when I started using Hyva, I saw this structure when we have the multiple themes in our project. Here's the vendor in the front-end area, and there are two themes, theme 1 and theme 2. Each theme has the Tailwind folder, which the separate package JSON and a bunch of CSS styles for the Tailwind. And eventually I came to the idea, not me, but the whole team, that we don't need to have separate packages for each theme. We just need to use one, because there are no conflicts in the packages versions. We can use multiple packages such as Tailwind plugins or auto prefixer and so on. And when we use a single package, it's much easier to manage and use each package for the specific theme. So yeah, first things first, I'd recommend at least to use a single package for all of your themes. If you have multiple vendors, just bring the package JSON up to the front-end folder and use the single package for all vendors and all themes which are using Hyva. Because the Tailwind is built the way that it has just a single JS configuration file, which defines all the customizations to a theme, separate configurations for colors or font families and so on. It may be a lot for a single JS file, especially when we are having multiple themes in our project. So, for example, if we have a multi-brand store which has multiple themes, which pretty much look the same but have the slightly different coloring and so on, then it might be useful to separate the color palettes to a separate JS files and import them to the Tailwind configuration. It will be better for readability. It will be better for managing the colors for each theme and so on. So we would just need to create a separate configuration file for colors. Let's just put it in the config folder and place the colors that we need for brand. We have a lighter modifier, we have the default, darker, and so on. Maybe we'll have some additional colors, and then we will just place the color palette to our main configuration file, Tailwind config.js, and extend our colors in theme with the color palette that we have. And of course, when we're having multiple themes, we not always have the same theme, the same themes without inheritance. It's usually one theme inheriting another. So we have the basic theme with all the templates and then maybe abstract styles, and then we have child theme with more specific styles, with some customizations and so on. So let's just imagine we have the same two themes, theme 1 and theme 2. The theme 1 is the parent one, and the theme 2 is the child one, which inherits the theme 1. For the theme 1, we would create some Tailwind configuration with maybe colors, font families, or other properties described. Then we would have some plugins such as auto prefixer, or maybe Tailwind plugins, I don't know, for forms. And then we would have the content and entry for the paths of all HTML templates that we have in our theme. So the Tailwind understands which utility classes should be purged from the resultant CSS. And usually in the first times, I see that developers just copy paste the Tailwind configuration from the parent theme to child theme and just change what they need just right in place. But why should we do this? We can just import the parent theme to the child theme. So we could do this like that. We can import the Tailwind configuration from our parent theme, then extract some parts that we need to change or override, and then just create a separate configuration for our theme 2, extending the parent theme configuration, but also changing something in the properties. So, for example, in this extent, we extended all the theme that we have here, colors, font families, and so on. And then we overriding, for example, font families, if it's the case when the theme 2 is for another locale. So we need to use different font families. And we also extend in the content part. So we need to add our own templates for the purging. So we extend the parent content property from the parent configuration. This will include external templates, if any, for example, from the code area, and the current theme, because we are placing the paths, the relative paths. So the relative paths from this config will apply to this config as a child theme. And to include the parent theme content, so the parent templates are also included in our configuration of the content. We'll place this line as well. So with this approach, Tailwind configuration for the child theme will have much less code. It will look much shorter and more clean. yeah, of course, Tailwind CSS has its own features, which I really advise to use because they're pretty useful. For example, sometimes, well, usually we will write styles with the Tailwind CSS using the apply directive, but sometimes we need to write styles or with CSS properties, not with utility classes. For example, when we need to calculate some value. For example, in this box, we would need to have the width, which is full width, but subtracting 16 pixels. We usually write it this way. But Tailwind CSS actually allows us to use the theme configuration in the CSS directly using this theme variable. So basically, for Hyva default configuration, spacing 4 and 16 pixels are the same, but the configuration might be changed. And if we leave our styles this way, the 16 pixels will remain 16 pixels. And in this case, the spacing will be adjusted accordingly. So I would advise to use this approach as much as possible in your CSS, even if you don't use apply directive. Another cool feature of Tailwind CSS are layers. Currently, the native CSS implementation of layers is there, so you can use them. The only difference between Tailwind CSS approach and the native thing is that in native CSS layers you can use as much layers as you want, and with the Tailwind CSS there are 3 layers that can be used. It's base, its components, and its utilities. So usually we would write, even for the Tailwind CSS, something like this. We have some box which has some padding and box radius and white background, and it will work correctly. It will just be placed at the bottom of the CSS file. But if we use layers in the Tailwind CSS, it will be placed to the specific place of in the file according to its layer. It will make your CSS more structured and more readable. Because the starter box sounds like something abstract which can be extended. So it looks like a component. So it's better to use layer for this. So you understand this box may be extended with more specificity. So, for example, for the base layer, you can add something super abstract like styles for body or for reset styles. And for the components, you use something like box or container. And for utility layer, you use utility classes, which will usually represent just a single line of a single CSS property. For example, this P4 rounded and beachy wide are included to the utilities layer in the Tailwind. Yeah, let's go straight to the Alpine.js components for better performance. It always, most of the times, it's related to building more complex user interface, because if you're just implementing the collapsible box, it's nothing about it. It's just a super simple Alpine.js component, and it just works. But when you're creating something more complex, there might be some lags in the work of your Alpine.js components. So first advice that I would like to give is to avoid the big chunks of data in the properties. For example, yeah, let's just speak about how it works. Alpine.js component is just let's say just an object with the properties and the methods. But the difference is that for each property of the component, Alpine creates the proxy object. So, and it creates it recursively. So if, for example, you have the property, for example, of array of products, each product may contain some more properties which may be also nested. So, for example, product has price, and the price might be minimal price, and the minimal price may have a currency, symbol, and amount, and so on. And so for each nested property, Alpine will also create a proxy object. And this may result in really bad performance on the user side. So if you have such in this example, if you have such a property like products with a lot of data, which may be transformed to the proxy object, you may consider create them the private property, which will be a static variable and will not be transformed to the proxy object. Here's the example how it can be improved. So in our constructor of the component, we'll just create a static variable products, and we will create two methods in the component itself, which will return the products and will set the products. So in this case, the products property does not exist because it's in the different scope, and and it will not be transformed to a proxy object, which may significantly improve your Alpine.js components performance. Another thing is quite obvious, but still, always try to pre-render the dynamic data that will be outputted. For example, if you are getting the data asynchronously with an AJAX request, and so on. For example, using Alpine.js component, we usually would, for example, we need to output the stock status. And according to the isAvailable property of our component, we will output either available or not available. And we will also add the xcloak attribute for hiding this element until the Alpine.js component is initialized. But it will result to the content jumping, because initially there is no line and suddenly there is a line. So better case would be to render something like loading or weight or something like that, or I don't know, like a skeleton if it's a product grid, for example, and it will be outputted until Alpine.js component is initialized and it has this isAvailable property, or if it's it was got after the AJAX call, and it will be this line will be replaced with according to your logic in the JS. So please always try to pre-render things for the dynamic content. It will improve your CLS point in the page speed insights. Yeah, and splitting the components is the topic for the complex user interfaces. I'll give you an example. On one project, I had this massive table. It represents the simple products of the grouped product. So each row in this table is a simple product. It outputs a bunch of attributes. It also we can also add the product to the cart or the wish list. We can also sort the table by each attribute. We can also filter the table by each value of an attribute. We can also expand the table to show even more attribute and so on. This is quite a lot for a single component. And just keep in mind that even though we use we just write inline JS and Hyvä Themes, we still can do the code splitting and do multiple components inheriting each other. So for this particular case, I started with a regular component. I started to write some state properties and methods, and the component was growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, I realized that no, this is too much. So I started to finding the ways to split it. And here's the first variant, how I which I came up with, I splitted my functionality to the separate points, logical points, and created a separate component. So, for example, for UI, I created a component variant stable UI, which will, I don't know, sort out some conditional styling or formatting attribute values and so on. Then I create a separate component for sorting, separate component for cart, wish list, and so on. Then I described each component, defined each component, and created methods. And then I combined all of them into one object. So there is one component in the end. In the HTML, I would create a single component, initialize a single component, and then just use each method of a child component directly without like it's the method of the parent component. But then I realized that it's not clear enough which method belongs to which component. So I decided to add some scoping. And then I came up to this solution. I created a parent component, and then I created properties which will represent each child component. So I created some kind of tree. And child components look pretty much the same, but in the HTML, I already see which component has which method, so I can easily update or fix some bugs and so on, and easily navigate the methods for each component. Each component is placed in a different JS file, and my main goal here is that especially when inheriting themes, JS should be splitted from the HTML, even though we are writing JS in the HTML templates. But it's much easier to inherit and support if the JS components are placed separately from the HTML. Yeah, so currently on a project, if I see that developing user interface will be quite large, I will use this approach for developing. Yeah, and also sometimes there are so many components on single page, so I came up with this idea with lazy components. It's pretty much the same is the lazy sizes approach, if you may know. Before the lazy attributes came out, we were all using it. And for example, when we can use it, usually we have those collapsible boxes in the footer, but Alpine.js works that way that it just renders all the components that it can find in the HTML on the DOM content loaded event. So but we don't really need to initialize our collapse boxes in the footer when we just loaded the page. We see only the header, the first screen. So the lazy components comes in hands here. All we need is just replace the X attributes from the elements with the X lazy attributes. So Alpine.js doesn't recognize them as Alpine.js components and doesn't initialize them. Then we create an intersection observer for such elements, so we can understand when the element is visible on the page. And then when intersecting, we're changing attributes back to their original names and use one of their methods. Methods are different because for the Alpine.js version 2, there is one method, and for the Alpine.js version 3, there is another method, but they do basically the same. They just initialize the components that are described in these elements. So yeah, lazy components are pretty useful if there are much of them and they are not visible on the first screen. Yeah, and to wrapping up, some of my experience with the common checkout solutions. When I'm thinking about the checkout in Magento 2, I always recall the tweet of a pretty famous person in the Magento community. Now I know why I got a 49 inches ultra wide to add a step to Magento's checkout process. Yeah, and it's true actually. Sometimes customizing Magento checkout maybe painful. Let's say that. So yeah, when I saw the React checkout, first I was just happy about it. I don't need a 49 inches ultra wide display anymore to adjust the JS layout of checkout. Yeah, my experience so far is pretty great. I think the React checkout is working much faster than the original one, because obviously we don't have those Knockout.js modules and HTML templates and so on. So yeah, it works much faster. And it's easier for building a user interface. Well, at least for those who are experienced with the React.js, you know that you'll just create a functional component, just place it in the way that it should be, and it works right away. You don't need to create those layout updaters and write those layout instructions and create view models and templates with that knockout syntax and so on. You'll just create React.js components. It's much easier. And also the structure is much less complicated than in the default checkout. It's easy to understand, again, at least for those who are experienced with the React.js. But the structure is much less complicated. There are just a bunch of components. There are area for API calls. There are you just use the context to output the data you need, and yeah, the structure is pretty simple. But in my opinion, there are some disadvantages of the React checkout, and mostly because it's not the very common thing, the very common approach for the checkout. So it may take more time to extend, especially if you're new to this module. You will need time to navigate through the structure, to understand how it works. And also there are not much third-party extensions, for example, for payment methods. So make sure that, not make sure, but prepare to implement your own payment integrations for the React checkout, depending on what payment methods you use on your project. And yeah, React checkout looks like a headless solution, but it is not actually. It's still a Magento page with the React checkout with the React application inside it. So yeah, it uses some headless approaches, but still it's a Magento page. So yeah, when I talk about using the headless solutions, you will need to have some experience in GraphQL API. It mostly uses GraphQL for everything, basically. So prepare to create GraphQL endpoints, create resolvers, write GraphQL schemas. You will have to do this. So yeah, but in general, I like React checkout. It's awesome. And when it comes to Luma checkout, I named this slide Luma checkout and procrastination, because you will see why. So basically, Luma checkout works that way, that it just switches the theme from the Hyva one to the one that you're telling it to switch. So the whole website will work on the Hyva-based theme, and the checkout will work on the Luma-based theme. It's the most it's the fastest approach for the project which are migrating from Luma-based themes to Hyva-based themes. So so the Luma checkout works the same as the default checkout. You just use the separate theme. So require.js is back, knockout.js is back, and so on. So you don't need to care about the JS. It just works the same way. But the struggle is Hyva, or not Hyva, but the struggle is styles, because imagine you've already put so much effort to creating a perfect Tailwind configuration. You started the configs, you have declared everything in your styles, and then you are back to the last, because there is a Luma-based theme, there is no Tailwind CSS, and there is none of your configuration. Here are the three approaches that I saw and I used myself. The first one is Tailwind CSS only, when you are just removing all the less things from the checkout. So you're removing the style sam style cell files. You don't use less modules. You are copying the Tailwind configuration and styles to your Luma-based theme and use that. Then there are two ways. You are rather rewrite styles from Magento class names because you did not use them in the rest of the website. You use the utility classes or maybe some custom classes in the CSS, or you rewrite all the templates with utility classes, which is even worse, because no one wants to rewrite all the templates of the checkout. The second approach, obviously, is just using grunt and less only. Basically, we will just migrate all the variables from our Tailwind configuration to the less according to the structure of the Luma-based themes, and just work with everything else as if there's no Hyva theme. So just a Magento 2 default front-end stack. And the third variant, obviously, is a mix of both. And I also tried this one, and this is why I call this Luma checkout and procrastination, because I didn't want to lose all my Tailwind stuff, but still I didn't want to rewrite all the styles for the from the blank theme. So I combined both, and oh dear, it was a disaster. It was just really messy and unclear. I didn't understand when to use less and when to use Tailwind. I tried to mix the configurations, added some JS to convert some variables to another variables to make it the same, because default library and less library and default Tailwind has different configurations, for example, for spacing and so on. And I wouldn't advise use this approach at all. Moreover, currently, and I stay, I guess, with this approach, I use the second variant. I use only grunt plus less. So I just forget about the Tailwind. I move my configurations to the less and work with the checkout as with the standard Luma-based theme without any Hyva stack technology. So I would advise to use second variant for the Luma checkout.